Hello everyone, today I want to tell you about French knight who served English but nevertheless was called as an exemplary knight. Meet Jean III de Grailly, more often called as Captal de Buch. First of all, I want to thank you, my patron, the Holy Father, or should I say bloody plebs? Man, thank you so much. Please, if anyone like my channel, please do consider supporting me on Patreon too. Thank you very much. So, let's start. Jean III de Grailly was born in 1331 and died in September 7, 1376. Captal de Buch, since 1343, Viscount of Benage and Castillon, Count of Bigorre since 1369, commander in the 100 Years of War on the side of the English. He was born between December 1, 1330 and February 28, 1331, probably in Bordeaux, son of Jean II de Grailly and his wife Blanche de Foix. The title Captal, a title of Gascon nobility, most likely came from Latin Captalis Domini, main seigneur. It was used only by the seigneurs of Tréigny, Péchagu, Épernon and Buch. When Pierre, the seigneur of Grailly, married Assalide, the Capitaline de Buch, the heiress of Pierre Amanieu de Bordeaux, Captal de Buch, in 1307, the title passed into the Grailly family, a line of rival seigneurs with origins in Savoy. From his brother Gaston, who died in 1362, he inherited his part of the Capitalat Buch. From his grandfather Pierre Pay II de Grailly, who died in 1357, he received the Viscounty of Benage and Castillon, after which he became one of the most powerful lords of Gascony. In historical sources he more often called the Captal de Buch. Jean de Grailly was viewed by Froissart as the ideal of 14th century chivalry. When he was captured, he demanded to know of his captor if he was a noble birth, and he would rather die than surrender to one who was not. I presume we already know that all his captors were a noble origin. Jean served under Edward III and Black Prince and received the Count of Bigorre title from Edward III in 1339. From a young age, he was in service of English kings, since they, as Dukes of Aquitaine, was his suzerains. In 1348, he became one of the first Knights of Order of Garter. Jean took part in the tournament of Woodstock in England in March 1355. In the same year, he led a delegation of Gascon nobles who arrived in England to ask for protection from a French king. An army led by Edward the Black Prince, who landed in Bordeaux in September, went to their rescue. During the campaign of 1355, he led the Midgard with the Prince Edward and Oxford. On the October 17, 1355, he captured the fortress of Plaisance. They returned from campaigning and spent the winter in 1355 in Bordeaux, and started campaigning again in the first week of January 1356. Jean de Grailly led a force northeast and captured the town of Périgueux. Before the Battle of Poitiers, he led a scouting unit, and during the Battle of Poitiers, Jean had a decisive role as a cavalry leader under Edward the Black Prince. Prince Edward ordered a small cavalry unit led by Joan to be held hidden in the rear as a reserve and ordering a flanking movement, with a mountain force charging into the left rear of a French force. The shout which his men gave when they launched their attack was probably crucial in breaking the French morale. Although it is likely that the French still outnumbered Anglo-Gascon force, they crumbled under the too prolonged attack, leaving King John and most of upper nobility prisoners in Edward's hands. Froissart gives an account of Captal de Buch chivalry and courage at a time of peasant uprising in 1358 called Jacquerie. On June 9, 1358, Jean de Grailly and his cousin Gaston Phoebus, Count of Foix, were returning from the Crusades in Prussia and reached Meaux in France, where at the same day 9,000 Jacques had entered the city and were trying to gain entry to the fortress called the Market of Meaux, which held by the Dauphine's wife, sister and infant daughter. Neither Joan nor Gaston were friends of the Valois, but chivalry dictated that should defend the ladies, so with 40 alliances and about 120 men, they defeated the rebels. This was the start of slaughter of peasants suspected of being rebels. Prince Edward encouraged Jean to take the position of lieutenant of Charles, King of Navarre, who plotted against French King Charles V the Wise. King Charles sent Du Guesclin against Navarre's army of Breton mercenaries, who at the same time was heading to attack Paris. And on May 16, 1364, at the Battle of Cacharel, he was defeated and taken prisoner by Bertrand du Guesclin, whilst ravaging the country between Paris and Rouen. He was released in 1363. Charles V put all efforts to turn Joan to his side. He even gave him a lordship of Nemours, which had been raised to a countship in 1564. The town and the countship of Nemours is about 40 miles from the southwest of Paris. Captal de Buch took the oath of fealty to the French King Charles V, but soon resigned his new fief and returned to his allegiance to the English king, due to discontent of Black Prince. Jean Froissart wrote about this as such. It also happened this winter that Queen Joanna and the Queen Joan, his sister, were so zealous for peace between the kings of France and Navarre that it was finally concluded, which was greatly aided by the advice and wisdom of Captal de Buch, who took great participation in this case. Thanks to this peace he received his freedom. The King of France showed him great tokens of respect. To prove this, he gave him a beautiful castle of Nemours with all the rights, appendixes and jurisdiction, and this castle bought him 3,000 francs of annual income. Thus the Captal became the fief of the King of France. The king was very happy to receive homage from him, since he really liked the service of such knights as the Captal. But it was short-lived, since when he returned to the land of a prince, who found out about everything that had happened, he was strongly shamed. He said he could not faithfully serve two lords at once, and that he was overwhelmed by the greed when he took lands in France, where he was never respected or loved. When he discovered that he was in such a position and that he was so bullied and mocked by his true lord of Prince of Wales, he was very ashamed and apologized, saying that in no way he was so connected to the King of France and that he can easily undo everything that he had done. Therefore he sent his own squire to return his homage to the King of France, declaring that he was returning everything that was given to him and remained loyal to the prince. In 1367, Jean took part in the Spanish expedition of Prince Edward, and he led the English right wing in the Battle of Nájera, in which this time Du Guesclin was taken prisoner and Jean was given the task of looking after him. In 1371, after the death of Jean Chandos, Jean de Grailly was appointed as Constable of Aquitaine. In May 1372, in Paris, Owain Lawgoch of Wales, one of the last descendants of a Welsh noble of Gwynedd family, the last Welsh kings, or Ivan de Galle, was serving as a commander of a free company. He served French, according to Froissart, since Poitiers, which resulted all of his English lands were confiscated in 1369. Offended, he decided not only to take his lands back, but to return to claim back the throne of Wales. Charles V decided to support him, and Owain set sail from Harfleur with money borrowed from Charles V. Owain first attacked the island of Guernsey and was still there when a message arrived from Charles ordering him to abandon his expedition in order to go to Castile to seek ships to attack La Rochelle. Owain sieged the castle of Les Soubise with 300 men, but was surprised by a Gascon force led by Jean de Grailly, who tried to lift the siege. Owain led 400 men up the estuary of the river Charente by the barge and surprised the Gascons in the night attack. The castle of Les Soubise fell, and Jean was captured by the French and was imprisoned in the Tower of Temple in Paris. Upon his capture, Jean is reported to have said, "Ah, Jean, you are truly lost." Enguerrand de Cussy petitioned Charles V for his release, but the king didn't want to release him until he promised never to raise arms against the France. Jean refused, so he stayed prisoner suffering from depression and not wanting to eat or drink. He sank into coma and died in 1376. This also showed a new tactic of a French king, not to ransom those who had later caused him trouble. Since Jean left no heirs, his uncle Archambault, Count of Foix and Bigorre, took the title Captal de Buch, which passed to his descendants, the Counts of Foix. So that's it for today's story. Like it if you do, subscribe if you don't want to miss more. Thank you very much. Bye bye.